Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from Minute Memory 6253 from the Advice subreddit and says, my sister is threatening to tell my family and boyfriend that I slept with her fiance. So I, 24 female, have a sister, 29 female, who's been in a relationship for 3 years. She got engaged in February 2025. They rented a small flat in our city. However, she's been staying at our parents recently due to the fight that started this. I am still a student who's living at home while finishing my master's degree. I have a boyfriend of 2 years and we are currently long distance as he is studying abroad. A little bit of backstory. Me and my sister don't get along. I have ADHD and my sister has ADHD, hyperactive type. She has always been the comedian of the family, but often her jokes come at the expense of others and involves winding people up or acting as a wooden spoon to stir any pot of drama she can find. I tend not to initiate contact with her to avoid any potential issues since, while she is family, I feel more stressed after spending time together. Me and my sister's fiance get along pretty well, however. We have shared interests in motorsports and we usually talk about it at family get-togethers. We don't talk outside of gatherings much, just the occasional text when F1 or MotoGP is running, or little life updates if we haven't seen each other in a while. My parents have said previously that they find it odd how I'm fine with talking to her fiance, but have a weird aversion to talking to her directly. But this has never been a point of tension. Back to recent times. A little over a month ago, my sister found bank statements in their flat for cards she didn't know existed. Most of the transactions had been to hotels or restaurants abroad. She checked the dates of the restaurants and they line up with the times and countries he'd been away for work trips, but the exact restaurant and hotel locations do not add up. Example, him going away for a conference, but the hotel and restaurants he booked were at least an hour away from the city. She immediately thought he was cheating and searched his phone, but found nothing. He caught her snooping and they fought about it, which ended up with him admitting he'd cheated while abroad. The wedding is off and she has moved back into our parents' place while they figure out their lease. The weekend after she came back to our parents, we went out for dinner as they thought she could use a pick-me-up evening with the whole family. Over dinner we talked a lot about recent life events, other than my sister's fight, and travel got brought up. I had traveled to Singapore in September 2025 to visit friends and to relive our undergraduate clubbing days. My parents wanted to plan a trip to Singapore and I recommended the hotel I stayed in, plus a few nice food spots around the area. In hindsight, my sister was uncharacteristically silent after this, but the rest of the dinner went by pretty normally. 2 days ago, my sister invited me to go to the dinner that evening, saying she had something serious she wanted to talk about without worrying our parents. This was very out of the ordinary for her. We haven't gone out to dinner with just the two of us since I was probably 15, but this whole situation was hardly ordinary either, so I didn't question it. The dinner hardly had any talking. Right after we ordered our drinks, she accused me of sleeping with her fiance and being one of the women he was cheating on her with. She pulled up the bank statements for me to check, and sure enough, there are transactions for the same hotel in the same week I was in Singapore, the one I mentioned to our parents. She accused me of being jealous of her relationship, saying that I was bitter that she was proposed to within 2 years of them starting dating, and that I clearly thought I was a better match for her fiance since we had more hobbies and interests in common. We literally only have one. There was a lot of back and forth of me trying to reason with her and get any sort of exact detail or legitimate proof that could have caused her to think this, but by this point she was livid. The whole thing escalated from 0 to 100 within like 15 minutes. I'm definitely missing a few details of her accusations, there were a lot of them, but the main threat she had was to tell my parents and my boyfriend I was a bitter, lying homewrecker, her exact words, if I didn't come clean. How on earth is someone meant to navigate this situation? I think it goes without saying that I never cheated and definitely not with her fiance, but how does someone begin to plead their innocence in a situation like this? I have no witnesses for me when I was in Singapore. I was visiting friends, yes, but I stayed in my hotel every night since they all live in different areas, and the hotel was pretty normal. Both sides of this case have basically no firm evidence other than a few bills. On top of this, how would I even begin to manage the fallout if she were to tell people this? Long distance is hard enough as is. I cannot imagine how shattered my boyfriend would be if I was told I cheated with a man he considered a friend. Any advice would be massively appreciated. We'll update this post once I have more information or to answer any common questions. An extra info. There was a 3-day overlap in dates. I arrived Tuesday, left Sunday. The statement showed charges from the Friday until sometime the week after. Don't remember exactly what day, I just know it was after I left. And first edit, boyfriend has been told. I'll post a formal update tomorrow once I have spoken to my parents about this as not to spam the subreddit, but I no longer need advice with how to approach him with this issue. Thank you all for your help on that front. Hey, just saying, says DOP, it's a massive coincidence that you would stay at the exact hotel her boyfriend stayed at on the same dates that he was there. This is a hard one to disprove if you weren't doing things with your friends in the evenings. OP says regarding the coincidence, agreed. I was really shocked when she showed me the bank statement. The dates had a 3-day overlap where we were both in the same hotel, though I never saw him or knew he was there. I was talking about how I had planned this trip for at least a month beforehand though, so I'm hoping my parents aren't too old, that they remember me asking about flights and travel restrictions. I don't go abroad often, but my mum has traveled a lot for work, so she's my go-to for travel advice. Regarding proof from evenings, I do have photos from nights out with my friends that prove I was with them basically every evening, but those photos dwindle in numbers the later each night got. I'll have to ask my friends if any of them can vouch that they dropped me off at my hotel, as that would disprove any restaurant charges. However, the issue of being in the same hotel rears its head again here, since she could always argue I went back to his room instead of mine. Another commenter says, when you went in your hotel room, did you open the door at any point? If not, you may get the hotel to provide keycard usage for those 3 days, easier than surveillance footage. Of course, if you left your room to get ice or some other innocuous reason, that won't help. Hope says I'm literally drafting up an email to the hotel as I type this. I was about to ask about surveillance footage, but this has just given me a new idea. Thank you. Tumbly Bump says context is everything. If you live in Hong Kong or Australia and all have busy professional lives, I can believe it. If you are from Dublin, New York City or London, and in lives that doesn't require travel, it gets a bit harder. Opie says we are all London based. I'm a student. I explicitly travelled over summer to visit people who went to my university for their undergrad degree, since the university I go to is very international. He works in finance and the company he works for is also very international. I don't know his exact job title, but I've seen a few clips of him speaking at conferences in Milan, so he definitely does travel legitimately for work. To a downvoted commenter, OP says, we haven't been in a long distance relationship the whole time, just since August of last year, since he took a year abroad in university. He visited over Christmas and we had plans to see each other over Easter, but mutually agreed that exams are kicking both of our asses and that we are better off just doing some parallel play via studying on FaceTime together. All is going well right now despite the stress of exams and now the added drama from this. I do trust that he will see my point of view. We both are similar in that we think through things somewhat robotically and logically. So I believe if I lay out the facts similarly to how I have done on this thread, he will be able to see the whole picture quite fast. However, this doesn't account for the chance that he doesn't trust me. I haven't quite thought through my game plan if that happens. It's not a pleasant thought to consider that your own partner doesn't believe that you didn't sleep with his friend. OP then replies to another comment saying, I stayed at the Shangri-La in the center of the city. We are well off financially and have lived at home my whole life. Never moved out since I went to university in the city my parents live in, so I have money from jobs as well as my maintenance loan set aside. A commenter says, this is not all on you to prove from thin air. She made the accusation, so she needs actual proof. That's how law works, lol. Opie says ironically she is a lawyer, but I doubt she's really going to care about typical legal proceedings right now, even if I swore myself in. Pretty says, you mentioned in a comment that you started planning the trip a month in advance, yet you also stated that the last time you spoke with her fiance was a month before your trip. Not one of you mentioned planning a trip to Singapore. I'm not buying this. Also, it's not cool to be messaging your sister's fiance behind her back. It doesn't matter how innocent the convos may appear to be. That's extremely disrespectful, and it opens all kinds of doors for things to happen. You played with fire and you got burned. OP says you realized the British Grand Prix was in early July 2025, and I said in the post that we messaged about F1, right? Since you've clearly read through the various comments and responses on this post, you also know I am London based, so this was home turf for us. My sister knew I messaged him occasionally. She messaged my boyfriend because he is currently studying in Germany and he helped her plan a week in November to visit. They even met up for coffee and I got a little photo of the two of them before she moved on to a smaller town to see her friends. Messaging each other's partners was pretty normal. This wasn't out of the ordinary behavior. Now the hotel thing, like one of the commenters says, did feel, suspicious at first. You're London based and you're both in the same hotel in Singapore at the same time on the same dates, although there was some sort of overlap. I think it would make anyone pause at first, but when you actually break it down, it's really not solid evidence, is it? The fiancé has already admitted he cheated, and not just once. There were multiple hotels and restaurant charges across different trips. So him being in the same hotel with someone isn't surprising at all. Big hotels have tons of guests, and the dates don't even fully line up since his charges continue after she left. Plus, there's zero actual proof connecting them. There's no messages, no calls, nothing. It just feels more like, the sister's in pain and trying to put a face to the cheating. Not excusing it, of course, because OP doesn't deserve that, and I feel really bad that she's in this situation. But OP did come in with an update and said, "Hello Reddit. First, I'd like to say a huge thank you to everyone who interacted with and or commented on my original post. It helped push it out as much as possible. And I got a huge range of point of views and suggestions as how to approach this. I tried to respond to everyone who asked and suggested something different, so there should be a fair bit of added context in the comments of the original post if you are interested in reading that. I also had a few people messaging me personally offering support or saying that I'm not in the wrong. While I appreciate this, please do not DM me personally about this. I may ask to DM and reach out on my own, but if you have advice you'd like to offer, I implore you to post it in the comments here. A couple of people have advice along the lines of, you didn't have to prove that you didn't cheat. It's up to your sister to prove that you did. I wish the world worked like this. Well, yes, this is the most logical way for an issue like this to solve itself. Gossip and rumors do not work like that. Many people echoed this, saying that generally people will have a bias to the first story they hear. Of course, there are plenty of people in the world who will hear her claim and think it's a bunch of bullshit, but that will be a smaller portion of people. I'm not willing to leave my reputation/standing with my friends and family in the hands of statistics. In order to keep this update linear, let's start with last night, approximately 5 hours after the original post. I video called my boyfriend, going to call him Ken in this post last night after reading through your guys' comments and advice. Many of you suggested I get in front of this as to not let her direct the narrative, so that's what I tried to do. Tried is the key word here. We chatted for a bit about normal stuff before I said we should talk about my sister's situation. Ken's facial expression visibly changed when I mentioned this. I asked what was up, and he said she'd messaged him some pretty weird stuff earlier that day about her ex and me. For context, Ken knows that me and my sister have a pretty complex relationship. He also knows that me and the ex talked occasionally. He encouraged all four of us to hang sometimes, but this only happened a few times and stopped once he left for his year abroad. I asked Ken what he had been told, and he said this, paraphrased from memory, as I don't know how to use a stenotype. He said, I got a text from her while I was out saying that she needed to talk to me about our relationship. She said our relationship was doomed because she caught you cheating with her fiance and that you didn't even try to defend yourself. You kept focusing on irrelevant details when it was clear you two were in the hotel together in Singapore. I know you and your sister don't get along, but I never got the impression you two hated each other enough for her to lie about cheating. So I don't know where to go from here. Opie continues, I was floored. As I mentioned in a comment on a previous post, Ken is similar to me that he puts logical reasoning before extremes. He asked if I had anything to say about it. I gave him the rundown of my point of view in chronological order, starting from when I was booking the holiday back in August 2025. I backed all this up with receipts, screen shares of my bank statements from any relevant times, and photos with timestamps from nights out with friends. Somebody suggested in the last post that I have as many receipts as possible, since it helps build a routine and picture of your day for people, since almost everything costs money these days, so you can track your movement. I did this before I called and made sure I had everything I might need to hand. I also got a few of my friends on text saying they know I was waking up in my own hotel room, since they had to call through the hotel reception to wake me up a few times. The whole thing took 45 minutes, of which he stayed relatively silent, aside from an occasional question to make sure he's understanding all the links I was drawing up. By the end of it, I was on the brink of tears, mostly because it took saying it all out loud to realize how fucked up the whole guilty until proven innocent thing is. Ken bluntly asked if I had cheated, which I said no, never. He took a minute and said he trusted me, which was a huge weight off my shoulders. He asked what could have made my sister think I cheated, and I said I didn't know, but thought she was just hurt and looking for someone to pin the blame on so she could vent her anger somewhere. He said that made sense, but he didn't understand how she drew these conclusions or how she pieced this together from a single hotel name drop. I asked what he meant, and he said there's at least 3 Shangri-La hotels or apartment blocks in Singapore, and he didn't understand how she knew I stayed in the exact same hotel. I didn't really have an answer to that. I didn't have a copy of the bank statement and didn't note down the exact recipient from the statement she waved in my face. I also said she could still argue I visited his room or he visited mine, which ended that speculation. I offered to ask to see the bank statement again, but he shut me down and said he would ask since she doesn't know we've spoken yet. He messaged her last night and she apparently responded saying she would send them to him in the morning, which should have been before this update was written, but I haven't heard anything from him, so I suspect that hasn't happened. The rest of the call was a lot of questions and not a lot of definite answers. He appreciates that I spoke to him about it and stay calm instead of spiraling, as it helped him stay calm about it too. I sent him the post I made to ask if he was okay with me updating our conversation, which he said he was fine and he would like to see what people have to say. I slept pretty well after that. TLDR, boyfriend was told by my sister before I got to talk to him, but believes I did not cheat. We talked it through and the bank statements and photos helped him see I was with friends almost all of the time. Onto this morning, right before I started typing this post. Both of my parents were home today, so I offered to cook breakfast as to hope we could all sit down and open up a chance for me to address my sister's case. I suspected that since she told Ken, she almost certainly told our parents too. However, when I tried to start explaining myself, I got cut off almost as soon as I mentioned the Singapore trip. My parents told me they had already heard my sister's half of the story the day before. No surprise there. My mum, who for context has a higher EQ than my dad and so generally takes charge with these sort of conversations, said that why they believe they raised me better than to do something like this. She was not going to let me plead my case to them, as I was clearly in a better state of mind about it, whereas my sister was torn apart. She said my sister was sensitive, and she would think that her own parents didn't believe her or care about her hurting. My dad chimed in, saying that she already had a slight resentment towards them and me because I was praised more when we were young. Context marked with a hashtag below, too much for brackets and not everyone will care, and that he wouldn't get involved but also refused to openly support me in a time where she needed to see she was supported and loved. To say I was blindsided was an understatement. The entire time they were talking on and on about how they didn't want to take sides. They were openly allying with her notion that I cheated with her fiance. The hypocrisy was brutal. I said all of this directly to them, calling out the contradiction and saying that they didn't take my side but openly comforted my sister. Everybody we know would draw up the same conclusion that I cheated and that my parents were being charitable by not reprimanding me further. My mum said that if I was able to repair all of this evidence and create a defense, this was proof that my mental clarity was leagues above my sister's and that she needed them more. I left after that, went for a ride on my motorbike, stayed out of the house for a couple of hours and took a breather. TLDR 2, parents said my sister told them yesterday, and they didn't want to take sides but would openly support her rather than me. I called out their hypocrisy, and they said they have a clearer mind right now, and they don't need to focus their attention on me right now. They need to help my sister instead. OP then adds the context, which she said she was going to add. My parents both come from poor backgrounds. My mum came to the UK with refugee status, and my dad's father died when he was very young. Both of them are now incredibly well off thanks to their education. As a product of this, academia is very important in our household. I was diagnosed with ADHD in the summer year 10 of secondary school. For those who don't know, year 11 has students' first major set of national exams called GCSEs, which start in year 10 and are a 2-year course. My parents rushed to get me on medication, as before this I was failing or getting poor grades, despite every parent-teacher meeting being filled with teachers saying I was a top-quality student with zero motivation. My sister comparatively never struggled with her studies. My parents praised me a lot more than they praised her, even though I did significantly less work, since an effort of 1% is infinite times greater than 0%. This apparently caused some jealousy, as she didn't get the same treatment from them despite putting in loads more effort, since that was considered her normal. So that's that. People were right in saying that it was going to get messy, and there was a large chance I would walk away from this with fewer people behind me than before. Ken is conflicted about my parents' approach, as he understands comforting the child who was cheated on, but doesn't imagine parents setting aside one daughter for the other. He's an only child, so they've had the issue of parents prioritizing any one kid. My sister will be cut off for good once this is all over. But for now, I need to focus on clearing my name as I don't know who else she may have told. I will not be cutting off my parents, so do not suggest that. However, I will be distancing myself and looking into moving out in June after my degree is over. Any advice on managing the parents or the fallout will be much appreciated. However, I do not think my parents' viewpoint will change until my sister comes to terms with all of this. I will update if anything new happens, but I suspect this will be a slow progression from here, so please do not message me for updates. Thank you all for reading. Oh man, I feel so bad for the OP. The parents are absolutely awful. You know, supporting your daughter who just got cheated on is one thing, but doing that by silencing your other daughter and even refusing to hear her side, you know, it's not neutral, is it? It's taking sides. Whether they admit it or not, they're basically saying, we won't defend you while you're being accused, which is how OP's reputation may actually get destroyed. That's awful. You don't get to claim you're not choosing sides while actively validating one accusation and shutting down the other person. That's so awful, but a commenter says to OP, just curious, but it sounds like you've got a golden child situation here. Maybe I missed that in the original post. You've clearly got solid evidence to prove you weren't cheating and convinced your boyfriend. I'm a little concerned about how your parents are handling this. Have they taken her side like this in other situations? Will they come back and claim that your evidence isn't up to their standards and set the bar impossibly high, all in an effort to protect your sister's narrative? What are you planning to do if that happens? I know there's multiple Shangri-La hotels there because I've stayed in different ones and actually booked over and went to the other one. Opie says, I wouldn't phrase it as my sister being the golden child. They have plenty of arguments too, and they know we are vastly different people. So they see why we clash. They just have been tired of our spats for years. Even when we were much younger, arguments between us didn't end. They just got quieter out of earshot of our parents because they were fed up of us fighting. They often watched her poke fun at me and, when an argument broke out, would just tell her not to do it again and move on. The main issue I have is that I don't think they seem to realize that this isn't a stupid sibling argument, but an actual, real threat to my reputation. They're taking the same kind of, I'm not taking sides, just going to comfort the one that's crying stance they did when we were kids, not thinking about how this approach looks to a very public audience. I have no plan for my next steps right now. They've clearly stated they don't want to hear my side, so they won't get it. However, our extended family will, as that's all I can focus my attention on right now. A commenter said to OP, where is your sister's fiance/ex-fiance in all of this? I want to know what he has to say. OP says, from my perspective, he's missing in action. I unadded him on social media after the relationship status changed as I felt it was inappropriate to continue to follow my sister's ex. I haven't heard much of him after that, other than my sister herself saying she got him to pay the remainder of the rent until the end of their flat's lease. To a longer comment, OP says, you literal angel, thank you. Feeling a bit emotional now reading that. Ken didn't put me on the stand. I did that myself, and honestly, I feel like it helped me to say everything out loud. I had a good few criticisms of my sister's reasoning, more than I typed in the post since it was already very long, and I think he was just very baffled since he's abroad and hasn't seen any of us in up to 4 months. I do see your concerns with how he approached this, i.e. ignoring the problem until I brought it up, but for now, I think things are okay. Not good, but okay. I'm kind of going over my friends and family in my head now, and realizing that I'm willing to lose a lot of them. If any of the friends or family I haven't spoken to wish to quietly exit my life, I have no intent on stopping them. In my eyes, they would have taken my sister's side, and that's not worth my effort to change. Thank you for such a heartfelt response. I really, really appreciate it. Another commenter says, something doesn't add up. I mean, how on earth did she randomly choose the same week to go on a trip to the same country with her sister's fiance and in the same hotel? Coincidence? Like I said, something feels off given the context. Funny they were staying in the same hotel and never bumped into each other during breakfast or dinner. Opie says, I think I've defended myself enough across the past 2 posts and their respective comment sections, but the breakfast or dinner comment is new. I don't know how often you travel or stay in hotels, but I don't think I've ever been to a hotel dinner. I eat out when abroad because a hotel restaurant will never get everything right, and it's more fun to go out with friends to a restaurant that specializes in whatever cuisine you fancy that evening anyways. I'm a tourist. I want to see more than just the hotel lobby when I spend 13 plus hours on a plane just to get there. Most breakfasts were also missed because the whole point of the trip was for my friends and I to drink ourselves to death. No sum of money could have got me out of bed before 11 AM after spending an entire night walking around humid Singapore while absolutely hammered. I mean, not quite the same, but I was in York I know it's only like a 3-hour drive from me, and stayed there for the weekend just past to, see all the Viking stuff and all that kind of thing. And absolutely agree with OP. I wouldn't go to the hotel for dinner. I want to go out and eat locally or something like that. Find something good to eat that way. And breakfast is always hit and miss for me because I'm always full from the night before. Another commenter says to OP, I have so many questions that need answers. 1, why would you have to get HR involved? 2, do you work together? 3, if you were there with your friends, why haven't your friends also jumped into this? 4, when you say you hang with your ex, is her fiance your ex? 5, am I missing something or getting some things crossed? I'm so invested after reading this. This could be a movie for real. OP says 1, someone said I should pressure the ex-fiance into saying who is actually cheating with. I said this was a good idea by getting my boyfriend to message him instead, but also mentioned that the ex-fiance might be hesitant to admit who it was if he was cheating with one of his co-workers. HR gets messy. 2, no, I'm a student. 3, the entire point of trying to get ahead of this was to avoid having everyone and their mothers involved in conspiracy theories, especially not people who live a 13+ hour flight and 7 hours ahead due to time zones. 4, her fiance is now her ex. 5, and definitely, I highly suggest you read the previous post if you haven't already, as it will probably clear up your confusion. That is absolutely rough, and I still can't get over the parents' response to all this. I understand having concern about one of your daughters who may be spiraling out of control, right? But to just push the other daughter completely aside, you can help them both and not enable this bullshit of OP being the one that's cheated. Because by enabling this, you're just going to make the whole situation 10 times worse. Sister can say to multiple people, friends, family, whoever, and turn them against OP. I know OP said she's not going to cut off the parents, but I'd be really, really pissed off at that kind of attitude from them. But what do you guys think of this one? How do you think it's going to go? It doesn't sound like it's going to go in a particularly good direction, but let us know your thoughts. And just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being here. And hopefully I'm going to see you in the next one. Take care and much love.